Hello and welcome to Unacademy's Let's Crack UPSC CSC in English channel. I am Rajshekhar Reddy, faculty for current affairs. To tell something about myself, I have cleared the civil services examination in 2014 and I have 7 years of experience teaching civil services aspirants. I am a BTech computer science graduate from JNTU Hyderabad and my experience in writing this examination will be beneficial for you to crack the examination at the earliest point of time. Before starting with today's lecture, I would like to tell something about the Unacademy Learning app. You need to download and subscribe to the Unacademy Learning app. You get a number of advantages by doing so. You have access to daily live classes where you can chat with your educator, engage in discussions, ask your doubts, and answer polls all while the class is going on. So, the live classes give you a number of advantages. You can chat with your educator, you can engage in discussions, you can ask your questions, and answer polls during the class. The courses that are available on the Learning app are structured and deal with the syllabus of the civil services examination comprehensively. Tests and quizzes are conducted every now and then, and you have unlimited access to content on the Unacademy's Learning app. India's best educators are teaching on the Unacademy Learning app. These people include Mrunal Patel, Roman Saini, Deepanshu Singh, etc. A number of courses are available on the Learning app, so you can have access to all these courses by downloading and subscribing to the Learning app. There are a number of subscription options available. You can subscribe for 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, and 24 months. The best option is the 24-month option because it gives you a 67% discount. You can get an additional 10% discount by using my code RRUPSC. The final transaction cost will be for 57,600. This amount is relatively cheap compared to the offline coaching institutions, which are quite expensive. Further, you can convert this transaction into no-cost EMIs by extending the duration of the EMI period to up to 24 months. So why delay? Subscribe to the Unacademy Learning app and start learning. Then we will continue with our series. So in the last series, we have in the first lecture of top 200 topics for Civil Services Prelims 2020, we have done 7 topics. In this lecture, we will cover 4 more topics. So these topics are postal ballot system, Earth Hour, third missile defense system, and Spratly and Parcel Islands. So the South China Sea dispute will also be discussed. So we have a series of lectures planned on current affairs. These lectures will focus on the very important topics of current affairs for the Civil Services Prelims Examination 2020. So let us start with the first topic for today's class, that is the system of postal ballots. So how do you vote in an election? So what is the procedure by which a person votes in election? So in an election, a general voter goes to a polling station and exercises his franchise by pressing the button of his choice on the electronic voting machine or EVM. So this is the usual procedure that is adopted by most people. So they have to go to the polling station and they will exercise their franchise in the EVM machine. But there are some group of voters who can exercise their vote via postal ballots. So there are a group of voters who can exercise their vote via postal ballots. Recently, the Election Commission of India has made a very important announcement with the postal ballot system. What is this announcement and what is the postal voting system? Who are eligible for exercising their franchise through postal ballots? And the other related issues with respect to this topic will be discussed in today's class. So, the Election Commission of India has announced that it will allow those above the age of 65 as well as those under home or institutional quarantine to vote using postal ballots during the Bihar elections. The Bihar elections are expected to be held in the later part of this year, and the Election Commission of India has made a very important announcement with respect to the Bihar elections. They have said that those people who are more than 65 years old and those who are either in home quarantine or in institutional quarantine or those who are in a medical facility can exercise their voting rights via postal ballots for the upcoming Bihar elections. Opposition parties, however, are unhappy with this development and have termed it as unconstitutional. So, why have they termed it as unconstitutional? We will discuss the points in a short while. But we before that we need to discuss what is postal ballot. Postal voting is a type of voting in elections whereby electronically transmitted postal ballot papers are distributed to electors and returned by post, in contrast to electors voting in person at a polling station via an electronic voting system aided by the electronic voting machines. So this is very important. Postal ballot system or voting is a type of voting in which an elector exercises his vote through what is called an electronically transmitted postal ballot paper. So this person will exercise his voting right on a paper which is transmitted electronically, and after filling the choice he will send this paper or this ballot paper via post to the returning officer. So there are a class of persons who are eligible to exercise their franchise via the postal voting system. They need to download a form and they need to fill this form, and they'll have to send this form via speed post to the returning officer of the constituency to which he belongs. So this is a very simple system of voting which is eligible to a specific class of persons. So this is the procedure I have mentioned here through a picture. So the returning officer creates what is called the electronically transmitted postal ballot paper, and this electronically transmitted postal ballot paper will be transferred to the record or unit officer. So the unit officer will be getting the electronically transmitted postal ballot paper. He will then transfer this paper to the service voter. So whoever is eligible to vote through postal ballot system will be given the electronically transmitted postal ballot paper. After taking the electronically transmitted postal ballot paper, he will have to mark his vote on that paper. After marking this vote, he must send it in a sealed cover via speed post to the returning officer. So again, it will come back to the returning officer. So there is a procedure. So first, the returning officer generates the electronically transmitted postal ballot paper. It will be sent to the record or unit officer of the person, and the officer will give the postal ballot paper to the service voter. The service voter marks his vote on the postal ballot paper, and he has to send it by post again to the returning officer. So this is something which you need to know. So who are the class of persons who are eligible to exercise their franchise through the postal ballot paper? So who are eligible to exercise their franchise through the postal ballot system? So this can be asked in the prelims examination. So listen carefully. Members of the armed forces. So members of the armed forces, we have 4 armed forces in our country: Indian Army, Indian Navy, Indian Air Force, and the Coast Guard. So members of these defense forces of our country. In addition to that, the members of the CAPF, Central Armed Police Forces, are eligible to exercise their franchise through the postal ballot paper. In addition to the members of the armed forces and CAPF, diplomatic staff are also eligible to exercise their franchise through the postal ballot system. Diplomatic staff are people who are working for India in different countries of the world, so they can exercise their franchise through the postal ballot system. The spouses of the above mentioned voters are also eligible to vote through the postal ballot system. So not just the service personnel, but their spouses who are staying with them can also exercise their vote through the postal ballot system. Are these the only class of people who are eligible to exercise their vote through postal ballots? No, there are some other categories of people who are also eligible to exercise their franchise through electronically transmitted postal ballot system. So these people include voters on election duty. So a number of people are engaged in election duty. So all these people are eligible to exercise their franchise through the postal ballot system. So polling officers, state police, election observers, monitoring teams, staff working in control rooms, helpline monitoring teams, etc., are eligible to exercise their franchise through the postal ballots. Most importantly, those people who have been subjected to preventive detention under any law are also eligible to exercise their franchise through postal ballots. So, postal ballot system is available for those people who are under preventive detention. Very important point. So, postal ballot system is available for persons who are under preventive detention system. In October 2019, following the recommendation of the Election Commission of India, the Law Ministry amended the conduct of election rules to allow absentee voters to vote by postal ballot. So this is a very important change that has been made by the Election Commission of India. So in 2019, following the recommendation of the Election Commission of India, the Law Ministry amended the conduct of election rules to allow absentee voters to vote by postal ballot. So the postal ballot system has been extended to a class of voters which are called absentee voters. But who are these absentee voters? Absentee voters include persons with disabilities. So these people who are disabled are also eligible for exercising their vote through postal ballots. So people with disabilities and those who are 80 years and more are eligible to exercise their franchise through postal ballots. So in October 2019, this change was introduced, and in February this year, that is in February 2020, Delhi became the first union territory to experiment with postal ballots, extending the facilities to those with severe disabilities or above the age of 80 years. So Delhi became the first union territory to extend the facility of postal voting to absentee voters, which include persons with disabilities and those who are more than 80 years old. Apart from them, there are another group of people who are also added as absentee voters. So these people include voters employed in essential services and unable to cast their vote due to their service conditions. So voters employed in essential services. This is very important. Voters employed in essential services and unable to cast their vote due to their service conditions are added as absentee voters. Currently, as of now, officials of the Delhi Metro Rail Corporation, Northern Railway, and media persons are notified as absentee voters. So these three groups of people are notified as absentee voters. In the future, they may include some other groups of peoples as absentee voters and extend the benefit of postal ballot to them also. So, voters employed on essential services and unable to cast their vote due to their service conditions can exercise their vote through postal ballots. Apart from these categories of people, special voters such as the President of India, Vice President, Governors, Union Cabinet Ministers, Speakers of the House have the option to vote by post. So all these people also have the option to vote by post. However, they have to follow a different procedure which is prescribed by the Election Commission of India. So special voters such as the President of India, Vice President, Governor, Union Cabinet Ministers, Speaker of the House have the option to exercise their franchise through the post by a different format prescribed by the Election Commission of India. So, what is the latest development with respect to postal voting? So, now, very recently on June 19th, the Law Ministry has notified a fresh change in the rules, allowing those aged 65 years and above to opt for postal ballots. So, those who are more than 65 years old and those who are under home quarantine or institutional quarantine have been extended the facility of postal ballots very recently by the Law Ministry in consultation with the Election Commission of India. This has been done in the backdrop of the COVID-19 pandemic. So COVID-19 has claimed hundreds and thousands of lives in India. So in order to restrict the spread of COVID-19, this facility has been extended to this particular category of voters. However, there are many political parties who object to the change that has been brought recently by the Election Commission of India. The Congress, the CPI, the CPIM, the Trinamool Congress, and the RJD have objected to the Election Commission's decision to allow voters aged 65 and above and those infected or suspected to be infected with COVID-19 to vote via postal ballots. Why have they objected to this move? So there are various reasons given. So first of all, the CPIM, Communist Party of India, Marxist, was the first to object to the change on the ground that the change was affected without consulting political parties. So this was done in a haphazard manner without consulting political parties, and that is the reason why they have objected to this change. Trinamool Congress has described it as an arbitrary, mala fide, and unconstitutional move against free and fair elections. And the CPI has asked the move will lead, and the CPI has said the move will lead to malpractices and foul play by those parties who are in power and have resources. So the Communist Party of India has said that the move will lead to malpractices and foul play by those parties who are in power and having resources. So there are various objections which are raised. The Congress has gone ahead and has argued that allowing those aged 65 and above to vote by postal ballot violates secrecy in voting, as a large segment of population is uneducated and they might seek assistance from others at numerous stages, ending up disclosing their preferred candidate choice. So Congress has stated that the people who are more than 65 years old require the assistance of others while exercising their vote through postal ballots, and in the process they can disclose their candidate or their voter preference uh, to others. So this violates the principle of secrecy. That is what the Congress has stated. So this also exposes them to administrative influence or influence by the government or the ruling party. This is what the Congress party has said. The RJD echoed these concerns and said changes to established democratic procedures should be made only after building broad consensus among all stakeholders. So the RJD has said that such changes should be brought only after building broad consensus among all stakeholders. The Election Commission of India, however, defended it, saying that senior citizens are at a higher risk of contracting COVID-19 infection, and the decision to allow them to vote via postal ballots was made to minimize their exposure in public. So the Election Commission of India has given a clarification. They have stated that this move was taken, this measure was taken by the Election Commission to ensure that the senior citizens do not contract COVID-19 and to minimize their exposure in public. So this is about postal ballots. So I'll just recap what I have said. Postal voting is a system of voting wherein a group of voters or class of voters exercise their franchise through what is called electronically transmitted postal ballot papers. These papers are downloaded online and are given to the service voters, and they are returned by post to the returning officer. There are a group of people or a class of people who are eligible to exercise their franchise via postal ballots. So these include members of the armed forces, CAPF, diplomatic staff, voters on election duty, those people who are under preventive detention, most importantly absentee voters, who include persons with disabilities, those more than 80 years of age, and voters employed in essential services. Special voters such as the dignitaries like President of India, Vice President, Governor, Union Cabinet Minister, Speaker of the House have the option to exercise this franchise. They have brought some recent changes. These changes include extending the facility to those above 65 and those with COVID-19 infection and who are under quarantine. Political parties have opposed this move on various grounds. Some have stated that it is arbitrary and require broad consultations. Some have stated that it is an unconstitutional move, and others have stated that it violates the principle of secrecy. So this is about the system of postal ballots. Let us move to the next topic for today's lecture. This is Earth Hour. So what is Earth Hour? When is it observed? What is the significance of this event? Who conducts the Earth Hour or who organizes the Earth Hour? This is an important topic. Many people know about the Earth Hour, but they don't know the specifics of this particular event. So first and most important thing that you need to know is Earth Hour is a worldwide movement organized by the Worldwide Fund for Nature. So this is an event organized by the Worldwide Fund for Nature. So Earth Hour is a worldwide movement organized by the Worldwide Fund for Nature. The event is usually held annually, encouraging individuals, communities, and businesses to turn off non-essential electric lights for 1 hour from 8:30 to 9:30 p.m. on a specific day towards the end of March as a symbol of commitment to the planet. So individuals, communities, and businesses are required to turn off their non-essential lights for 1 hour, that is from 8:30 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. on a specific day towards the end of March as a symbol of commitment to the planet, to highlight the issue of energy consumption and to highlight the issues of climate change and global warming. This event is held annually on a specific day in the month of March. You need to remember this is not held on the same day every year. It is held on different days every year, but usually it happens on the last Saturday of every last Saturday of the month of March every year. Usually, not compulsorily. It usually falls on the last Saturday of the month of March. This event was started in 2007. So it was started as a lights off event in Sydney 2007. Since then, it has grown to engage more than 7,000 cities and towns across 187 countries and territories to raise awareness for energy consumption and effects on the environment. Occasionally, in years when Holy Saturday falls on the last Saturday of March, Earth Hour is moved a week early rather than its usual date. So it is moved a week early than its usual date when the last Saturday happens to be the Holy Saturday. This year, Earth Hour was observed on the 28th of March. So these are the points which you need to remember with respect to Earth Hour. So Earth Hour is a movement organized by the Worldwide Fund for Nature. This is an event which is held on a specific day in the month of March, where individuals, communities and businesses turn off non-essential electric lights for 1 hour. This movement was started way back in 2007 in Sydney, Australia, and usually it happens on the last Saturday of the month of March. Then we will look at a very, very important topic. This topic falls under disputed territories. This is a very important topic for the prelims as well as the mains examination. So this topic is the disputes in the South China Sea and the various issues related to this particular dispute. In the middle of the global coronavirus pandemic, China has been increasing its presence in the South China Sea. So when the entire world is focused on how to deal with the COVID-19 disease, China has set its eyes on some other issues. These include increasing its presence in the South China Sea. This time, the focus of its acquisitory attention are two disputed island groups, namely the Spratly Islands and the Paracel Islands in the middle of the South China Sea waters. They are specifically focusing on two important island groups which are located in the South China Sea. These groups are the Spratly Islands and the Paracel Islands. Both these islands are located in roughly the middle of the South China Sea. Recently, they have decided to rename some 80 islands in this group of islands, which has attracted a lot of criticism from the neighboring countries, especially Vietnam and Philippines. So, when the entire world is focusing on COVID-19, China has set its eyes on other issues, especially the South China Sea. So, they have decided to rename some islands in the South China Sea. These islands form part of the Spratly group of islands and Paracel group of islands. So, they have decided to rename as many as 80 islands in these two island groups. So, you can see here, these are the Spratly Islands. It is mentioned here. So, these group of islands, they are actually spread over a large area. So Spratly Islands are located here. They are located very near to the coast of Vietnam and Philippines and Malaysia. So they are almost equidistant from all the three countries. In fact, all the three countries have claims over these islands. Then we will look at the Paracel Islands. So this is where the Paracel Islands are located. So Paracel Islands are located to the north of Spratly Islands. So Spratly Islands are located somewhere here. Paracel Islands are located here. Paracel Islands, however, are disputed between China, Taiwan and Vietnam. So we will look at the dispute now. So this is where Spratly Islands are located and this is where Paracel Islands are located. So what is the dispute? So what is actually the dispute? So it is a dispute over territory and sovereignty over ocean areas. So it is basically a dispute over the control of territory. In this case, territory refers to the control of islands, and sovereignty over the ocean areas. So sovereignty or control over the ocean areas. So in this case, the territory includes the two group of islands, that is the Paracel Islands and Spratly Islands, which form part of an important chain of South China Sea islands. Alongside with these islands, alongside the full-fledged islands, there are dozens of rocky outcrops, atolls, sandbanks, and reefs such as the Scarborough Shoal. So, apart from these islands, there are some other relief features which are also disputed. These include rocky outcrops, atolls, sandbanks, reefs, and there is a specific reef that is mentioned or shoal that is mentioned here, Scarborough Shoal. This is actually disputed between Philippines and China. So China, Vietnam, the Philippines, Taiwan, Malaysia, and Brunei are all having competing claims over Spratly Islands. Spratly Islands are claimed by as many as 6 countries. So China, Vietnam, Philippines, Taiwan, Malaysia, and Brunei all have competing claims over the Spratly Islands. China has backed its expansive claims with island building and naval patrols. So China has started behaving aggressively in this region. They have started creating artificial islands in this region, and they are claiming the entire part of the South China Sea. They have created one line called the Nine Dash Line. We will look about the Nine Dash Line shortly. But they have increased their naval patrols and have increased the activities such as island building, artificial island building in this region. Although largely uninhabited, the Parcel Islands and the Spratly Islands may have reserves of natural oil and natural gas around them. So it is said that Parcel Islands and Spratly Islands may have reserves of natural resources around them. There has been little detailed exploration of the area, so estimates are largely extrapolated from the mineral wealth of the neighboring areas. So there is no exploration that has been carried out in these islands, but these assumptions are based on the mineral wealth of the neighboring areas. So this is something which is important. Why are these group of islands very important? So it is believed by many countries that these islands are very rich in oil and natural gas resources. Though there have not been any explorations conducted in these regions, explorations conducted in the nearby islands have yielded significant mineral wealth. And these countries believe that Parcel Islands and Spratly Islands also have a lot of mineral wealth. For example, in the 1970s, oil was discovered in the neighboring islands, specifically of the coast of Palawan. So you can see Palawan Island here. So this is Palawan Island. So oil was discovered in this island. So this actually sparked speculation with respect to the presence of oil and natural gases resources in Spratly Islands as well as the Parcel Islands. So Palawan Island is located to the east of southeast of Spratly Islands. So in the 1970s, oil was discovered in the neighboring islands, specifically of the coast of Palawan. This discovery ramped up territorial claims by these countries. Over the years, US government agencies have claimed that there is little to no oil and natural gas in these islands, but these reports have done little to reduce their territorial disputes. So, though the US has said that these islands are not having any oil and natural gas resources, these claims by the United States of America has done little to resolve the territorial disputes in the region. This South China Sea is also a very important shipping route. So the sea is also a major shipping route and is home to fishing routes that supply livelihoods of people across the region. So this is said to be a very important fishing zone. Apart from being an important fishing zone, it is also a very important shipping route. So this is the reason why this is strategically also very important. Who claims what? So which country claims what is something which you need to know. China claims by far the largest portion of the territory, an area defined by the Nine Dash Line, which stretches hundreds of miles south and east from its most southerly province of Hainan. So China actually claims large areas of the South China Sea. They claim both Parcel Islands as well as Spratly Islands, and they have created a line called the Nine Dash Line. And this Nine Dash Line actually covers as much as 90% of the South China Sea. You can see the Nine Dash Line here. So you can see the red line here. So this is the claim made by China. So China says all waters within this Nine Dash Line belong to them. So these are the Parcel Islands, these are the Spratly Islands. As I've already told you, Scarborough Shoal. So this is a disputed island between China and Philippines. It is actually located very close to Philippines, but China has claims over this. So you may be asked a question in the examination, what is the 9 dash line, which you often hear in the news. So 9 dash line is a line that is proposed in the South China Sea by the Chinese. So it is a line that is proposed by China to assert its claims over the territory of the South China Sea. So you have to remember this line that is called the 9 dash line. So China claims by far the largest portion of the territory, an area defined by the 9 dash line, which stretches hundreds of miles south and east from its most southerly province of Hainan. Beijing says its right to the area goes back to centuries when Parcel and Spratly Island chains were regarded as integral part of the Chinese nation, and in 1947 it issued a map detailing its claims. So China says that they have exercised sovereignty over these islands for several centuries, and in 1947 they have released maps detailing these claims. So this map shows the two island groups falling entirely within its territory. These claims are also made by Taiwan. So Taiwan also has made claims over ownership of Spratly Islands and Parcel Islands. However, critics say that China has not clarified its claims sufficiently, and that the 9 dash line that appears on the Chinese maps encompassing almost the entirety of the South China Sea includes no coordinates. So they don't know exactly where the 9 dash line passes through, and many experts reject Chinese claims over this region. It is also not clear whether China claims only land territory within the 9 dash line or the territorial waters within the 9 dash line. So they have not clarified whether they claim only the land territory, that is the islands, or whether they also claim the territorial waters within the 9 dash line. So this is something which need to be clarified by the Chinese. As I have told you, this is the 9 dash line. Vietnam hotly disputes China's historical account, saying China has never claimed sovereignty over the islands before the 1940s. Vietnam counters the Chinese claim, saying that China does not have any control over the islands before the 1940s. Vietnam says it has actively ruled over the Parcel Islands and the Spratly Islands since the 17th century and has documents to prove it. Vietnam counters the Chinese claims, saying that they have documentary evidence to show that they have exercised sovereignty over this region from the 17th century. The other major claimant in the area is the Philippines, which invokes its geographical proximity to the Spratly Islands as the main basis of its claim for part of its grouping. So you need to remember this point. Paracel Islands are claimed by only Vietnam and China, and Taiwan is also involved. So Vietnam, China, and Taiwan are involved in the Parcel Islands dispute. Spratly Islands dispute, on the other hand, involves several countries. So these include Vietnam, China, Taiwan, Philippines, Malaysia, Brunei. So the other major claimant in the area is Philippines, which invokes its geographical proximity to the Spratly Islands as the main basis of its claim for a part of its grouping. For the part of its grouping, both the Philippines and China lay claim to the Scarborough Shoal. So they both claim this particular shoal called this Scarborough Shoal, and it is called by a different name, Yungyuan Island in China, a little more than 160 kilometers from Philippines and some 500 miles away from China. So Scarborough Shoal is located very near to the Philippines coast, and they claim this particular shoal. Malaysia and Brunei also lay claim to the territory in the South China Sea, that they say falls within their exclusive economic zones as defined by the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. So Malaysia and Brunei also say that they have rights over the South China Sea as this region falls within their exclusive economic zone under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. Brunei, however, does not claim any disputed islands. They just claim the fishing rights in this particular region. And Malaysia actually has claims over some islands. So South China Sea is a hotly contested region. It is a very important shipping lane. Apart from being a very important shipping route, it is also having rich fish resources, and lakhs and lakhs of people are dependent on the South China Sea for their livelihood. So Chinese activities in this region has angered many people in the recent period. So there have been a number of events that have occurred in the past. So there have been a number of clashes in the past between countries in this region. So the most serious trouble in recent decades has flared between Vietnam and China, and there have also been standoffs between Philippines and China. So it is only between Vietnam and China and between Philippines and China that these standoffs have occurred in the past. So in 1974, the Chinese seized the parcels from Vietnam. So they took control of the parcel islands from Vietnam in 1974, killing more than 70 Vietnamese troops. In 1988, the two sides clashed over the control of the Spratly Islands. In 2012, China and Philippines engaged in a lengthy maritime standoff, accusing each other of intrusions in the Scarborough Shoal. So China is involved in various standoffs with other countries. Unverified claims that the Chinese Navy sabotaged two Vietnamese exploration operations in late 2012 led to large anti-China protests on Vietnam streets. Importantly, in 2013, Manila, that is Philippines, said it was taking China to the United Nations Tribunal under the auspices of the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. So China was dragged to the International Tribunal on the Law of the Sea by Philippines in 2013. In May 2014, the introduction by China of a drilling rig into waters near the Parcel Islands led to multiple collisions between Vietnamese ships and Chinese ships. So Chinese started drilling activities in 2014, bringing them into a collision course with the Vietnamese. So what is the solution for this dispute? So there have been a number of standoffs which have occurred in the past. So these standoffs were mostly between China and Vietnam. At times they have been between Philippines and Vietnam. Uh, what is the solution for this, and what are the efforts that are being made to resolve these disputes? China prefers bilateral negotiations with other parties, so China is involved in resolving these disputes bilaterally. But many of its neighbors argue that China's relative size and clout give it an unfair advantage. But others say that China's size gives it an unfair advantage. Some countries have argued that China should negotiate with ASEAN, a 10-member regional grouping that consists of Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Singapore, Brunei, Laos, Vietnam, Myanmar, and Cambodia. So the countries in the ASEAN group want China to negotiate not with individual countries but to with the ASEAN group itself. However, China is opposed to this, while ASEAN is divided over how to resolve the dispute. So there are differences within ASEAN on how to resolve this particular dispute. The Philippines has sought, as I've already told you, in 2013 they have brought a case against China in the International Tribunal on the Law of the Sea. Importantly, in July 2016, the tribunal backed Philippines' case, saying that China has violated Philippines' sovereign rights. So the International Tribunal on the Law of the Sea gave a judgment in favor of Philippines and has stated that China has violated the Philippines' sovereign rights. China has boycotted the proceedings and called the ruling ill-founded. China has rejected these proceedings, and they have said that they will not be implementing this judgment. This judgment will not be implemented by China, so they will not be bound by the Chinese. So very recently, at the ASEAN summit, this issue was again brought up by Philippines and Vietnam. They expressed disappointment over the aggression of the Chinese in the South China Sea. And the Americans have frequently conducted what is called the freedom of navigation exercises in this region in order to assert the principle of an open sea. And they have angered the Chinese because the number of naval exercises in this region by the Americans have increased significantly under the leadership of Donald Trump. They have conducted as many as 22 naval exercises under the leadership of Donald Trump, and these exercises are called freedom of navigation exercises. You need to remember this. Freedom of navigation exercises are held frequently by the United States of America in the South China Sea to assert the principle of the freedom of open seas. Most importantly, and very recently, the United States has rejected the Chinese claims over this territory. So recently, the United States Secretary of State has stated that they do not accept the Chinese claims over this particular island groupings. So this is something which is important. Till date, they have not taken sides. The USA has remained neutral. They have not taken sides, but now they have said that the Chinese claims over these island groups are uh, not accepted by the United States of America. So this is a very important development. In the mains examination, you will be asked questions on the relationship between USA and China. Though they are not in our neighborhood, these two countries are the most powerful nations in the world. Disputes between these two countries can be asked in the mains examination or the prelims examination. USA and China have differed on a number of issues: trade war, COVID 19, the Hong Kong issue, the Uyghur issue, the Tibetan issue, and the South China Sea, freedom of navigation, etc. So they have differed on a number of issues. So you have to be prepared to expect a question on the relationship between USA and China. So this is about the Spratly Islands and Parcel Islands. So you can go through the file, so you can see the pictures and you can make your notes. Very important topic for the prelims examination as well as the mains examination. You need to remember the island names, and you also must remember that Scarborough Shoal, which is disputed between Philippines and China. Then we will come to the last topic for today's class. This is also a topic in international relations. This is a missile defense system which is in the news. This is also one of the issue that affects the relationship between USA and China. So this issue is called THAAD, and we will look at the various aspects related to this particular defense technology. China has recently reiterated its long-standing objections to the presence of US THAAD missile defense system in South Korea. So China has recently reiterated its long-standing objections to the presence of US THAAD missile defense system in South Korea. So this missile defense system, so this is a missile defense system developed by the US and it is deployed in South Korea. A missile defense system is a defense system which protects a country from attacks of other countries. So here this defense system has been deployed in South Korea. Assume that North Korea has decided to attack South Korea and they have launched missiles into South Korea. In such a situation, this missile defense system will be triggered and the incoming missiles will be destroyed in the air itself by the THAAD missile defense system. So we will look into the specifics very shortly. So, but China has objected to the deployment of THAAD missile system in South Korea. Its opposition recently came following reports of an overnight operation to bring in new replacement interceptor missiles to the US base in South Korea. So these missiles were deployed way back in 2017. So the THAAD missile defense system was deployed in 2017. Now it has been deployed once again in 2020. Actually, they have not deployed a new defense system. They have replaced the old interceptor missiles with new latest interceptor missiles. And again, China has brought the issue of THAAD. China had been objecting to the defense system since it was first deployed in South Korea 3 years ago in 2017, causing a deterioration in ties between the two countries. So in 2017, the relationship saw significant deterioration because of the deployment of this missile defense system. And once again, this issue has been brought up as new replacement interceptor missiles have been brought by the US in South Korea. But what is THAAD and how does it function? So THAAD is an acronym for Terminal High Altitude Area Defense. So it stands for Terminal High Altitude Area Defense. It is a transportable ground-based missile defense system. So it can be transported easily and it is a ground-based missile defense system. You can see the picture here. So it is a transportable. So you can see this vehicle on which the THAAD missile defense system is mounted. So you can transport this system very easily and it is launched from ground. So it cannot be launched from water. It is launched from ground. So THAAD is an acronym for Terminal High Altitude Area Defense, a transportable ground-based missile defense system. THAAD is coupled with space-based and ground-based surveillance stations which transfer data about the incoming missile and inform the THAAD interceptor missile of the threat type classification. So THAAD missile defense system will be triggered of any incoming missile attack by a series of ground-based and space-based satellite systems. So ground-based stations and space-based stations will alert the THAAD interceptor missile defense system of any threat that is incoming. THAAD is alarmed about incoming missiles by space-based satellites with infrared sensors. This anti-ballistic missile defense system has been designed and manufactured by US company Lockheed Martin. So this is a missile defense system developed by Lockheed Martin. It is deployed in a country to protect the country from incoming missile attacks. It is linked with a series of ground-based and space-based surveillance stations. These stations alert the threat that is coming into a particular country. You must remember that South Korea is not the only country where this missile defense system has been deployed. It has also been deployed in other countries like UAE, Guam, Israel, and Romania. So the missile defense system has been deployed in several other countries, including UAE, Guam, Israel, and Romania. So as I have told you, this is how THAAD looks like. So it is transportable, ground-based missile defense system. So why is China opposing THAAD in South Korea? So why is China opposed to the deployment of THAAD in South Korea? So according to the Washington Post, China's opposition has little to do with the missiles itself and is more about the system's inbuilt advanced radar systems that could track China's actions. So according to the Washington Post, China's opposition has nothing to do with the missiles, but it has something to do with the system's inbuilt advanced radar systems that could track Chinese actions. So the advanced radar systems of THAAD can track developments that take place in the interiors of China, and that is the reason why China is worried about the deployment of THAAD in South Korea. They have expressed their anger at the United States of America, and they have also warned South Korea against the deployment of THAAD in South Korea. However, they have ignored these threats by the Chinese. They have also expressed concern that the USA is increasing its presence in China's neighborhood, especially in Japan and South Korea. So this is how it works. So first, this is a very advanced missile defense system which has ability to intercept missiles inside and outside the atmosphere. It has the capability to defend population centers and high value infrastructures. It is interoperable with other ballistic missile defense systems, and it is highly mobile. So how does it function? So when an incoming threat is identified by the ground-based and space-based stations, the THAAD is triggered and the THAAD releases the interceptor missiles. These missiles counter the incoming threat in the atmosphere itself and they destroy the incoming missile in the atmosphere. Thus, they protect the country from any destruction. Following the deployment of replacement missiles, China has issued a statement urging the US not to harm bilateral relations between Beijing and South Korea or Seoul. The US and South Korea have, however, consistently maintained that these missiles are only to counter the potential threats by North Korea. So these missiles have been deployed to counter the threat posed by North Korea and they are not aimed at any other country. South Korea also issued a statement saying that the number of missiles had not been increased but had only been replaced with the newer versions. So they have not increased the number of missiles, but they have just replaced the old missiles with the new interceptor missiles. So this is what you need to know about THAAD. So what is THAAD? What are the various features of THAAD? They can ask you questions on developments in the field of defense and space research in the prelims as well as the mains examination. So you must know the various features of THAAD. India has also decided to buy a missile defense system, but India will be buying a missile defense system from Russia. It is called S-400 Triumph missile defense system. So you may have to study the comparison between S-400 and THAAD also. So this is about THAAD. So there was a question asked in 2018. As I've told you, these missiles were deployed in 2017 in South Korea. I have told you that this resulted in a deterioration in the relationship between USA and China. So in 2018, they have asked this question. So what is terminal high altitude area defense, sometimes seen in the news? So the answer is it is an anti-American missile system. So this is the answer for this question. So this is a very important topic for the prelims examination. So these are the 4 topics which I have taken for today's class. So this is lecture 2 in the series of lectures. So top 200 topics in current affairs for civil services prelims 2020. You can call me at this number 767393990 for clarification of your doubts. Please use my code RRUPSC when you install and subscribe to the Unacademy Learning app. And you can follow me on Telegram at this ID. So you can follow me at Rajashekar Reddy K in Telegram. So thanks for watching and all the best.